Okay, I see Amy now, so it's 5:32 and I'll call the meeting to order. First on the agenda is consent agenda, previous minutes. I wasn't present, so is there any discussion or any changes that need to be made to the minutes? You're muted, Polly.
Yeah, no, I'll move to accept.
Okay, motion made by Polly. Any other discussion? Okay, so we're virtual, so we're back to roll call. Mort?
Aye.
Amy? I'll come back to Amy. Sarah?
Aye.
Rick?
Aye.
And Amy, can you hear me now?
I can. I'm just barely got in now, so I missed the beginning. Sorry.
Okay, just approving the minutes from the last meeting.
Yep, aye.
And Polly?
Aye.
Aye, and I will abstain since I was not present. So motion carries, minutes are approved. Next up is preview and prioritization. I'll look to you, Lynn, to see if you have anything.
I don't have anything that we need to move.
Okay. And then recognition of visitors. So I'm going to leave that to you, Morgan, because you're in the building.
So we have two in the room. Do you want to address the board?
Yes.
Yep, so you can step up to the microphone and talk towards the little white dot. And just introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Jared Valancourt from Berkshire. Can everybody hear us fine?
Yes.
I want to say that on Friday, September 24th, the school administration sent a letter to parents informing us that the hand gesture that previously meant A-OK now holds a very different connotation and that students should completely refrain from using it. The administration also indicated that using this hand gesture falls into the category of a human rights violation. Now, I want to provide you with some examples of use of this symbol that I've seen since receiving this letter. First off, and I'm hoping you guys can all see me here, my son was eating a snack holding in his fingers. He had some friends walk by and he waved to them. He said, "Oh, great, Dad. Now they're going to think I just gave them the white power symbol." I said, "No, you just waved to them." Another example, we were watching the television show, America's Got Talent. When one of the performers was singing to another performer, and at the end of it, he asked him, "How do you think I did?" The performer looked at them, gave him the A-OK sign, and said, "You did all right." Is the school administration going to write to the producers of America's Got Talent and inform them that they just gave the white power symbol to millions of viewers? And worse, they committed a human rights violation. It should also be noted that both these performers are Black. The final example that we just saw this past week was President Biden was on the news discussing his $3.5 trillion bill that he wants to have passed. He was trying to explain to reporters, it'll cost $0. $0. Again, my son said, "Did you see that?" In each one of these examples, it's important to know the context in which this hand symbol was used. Now, in the case of a student that's using this hand symbol inappropriately, it should be dealt with on an individual basis. However, this hand symbol is still commonly used in our society for a variety of reasons that have nothing to do with race or human rights violations. You have harmed my son and others in the community by making them hypersensitive to only the negative meaning of this symbol. You have harmed my son and others by teaching them to only look at this symbol through the eyes of racism and hate. Thank you for my time.
Thank you, Jared.
That's it from the room, Kevin.
Okay. And also I saw on Zoom, Melinda Foley Are you
She's
here to speak, or are you for the school spotlight?
She's here for the school spotlight.
Okay. And that will end the recognition of visitors. So we are up on the school spotlight.
So Melinda Foley is our family consumer science teacher at Richford Junior Senior High School. She has started many popular classes, and she agreed to come tonight to share with you some examples of a couple, and you were going to get some treats, but since we're remote, she can't come to each of your house and deliver. So I'm going to turn it over to Melinda.
All right, so the two classes that I am going to highlight is my interior design class and alternative cooking. Right now, they're kind of working together to design table settings for events around the building, and they provide staff lunch on Fridays. So the interior design class designs the table settings, and then the alternative cooking class cooks the food. So I don't know, can I share my screen?
I think Morgan can give you the power.
Okay.
You should be able to.
Can you see it? Okay. So this is a PowerPoint that my alternative cooking and interior design class put together to share about what they're learning. Can you not hear that? Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know how to make the sound work.
I texted her sound.
Is that better?
No, I can't hear anything. Can any of you
Oh.
hear?
Melinda, if you unshare and then when you reshare, there should be an option to share the
Okay.
computer sound as well.
Let's see. So stop sharing. I'm sorry.
No worries.
I think we were making meaning even without the sound, Melinda. You're
Oh, well, that's good. I am gonna say I'll restart it, but he says table designs, but he was a little nervous. He meant chair designs.
Hey everyone, so today I will be
That better?
presenting our classes Interior Design and Alternative Cooking. Both are taught by Miss Foley. Key learning targets for interior design include evaluating design decisions in relation to available resources and options, examining floor plans and furniture arrangement, evaluating the use of housing and interior furnishing, and products in meeting individual and family needs. Those are some of the key learning targets for interior design. A project we have done in this class was to design a function gave by our teacher, Ms. Foley, and make a miniature chair design. We had to uniquely make our chair compatible with certain conditions it was made for. These are some of the table designs we used to demonstrate different design concepts. The third chair on the right, I designed to fit the criteria of being functionable and appealing to the eye. I wanted to design an outdoor chair to read and write in. The plastic was a unique component used to prevent water damage and stains. Every week we set up a table for our teachers in the teachers' lounge, and our cooking class would make food for it. On the left, our backdrop and table was fall themed and designed it to be evenly proportioned. On the right, we demonstrated circular patterns and a circular design.
So to demonstrate food safety, I gotta use this. And sanitation procedures, we wash our hands and we watch how we handle sharp objects, and touching food with your hands when you touch something else is cross-contamination, and we try not to do that. I can demonstrate professional food preparation methods and techniques for all menu categories. And to produce a variety of food products that meet customer needs. So you try to make it look good and smell good so people will want to eat it. And then when they do eat it, you want them to keep wanting more. So these pictures are what we did for open house. So we practiced our knife skills by cutting the cheese and the raspberry things. And also food safety, because you should wash the grapes before you eat them. And we wear gloves.
We've learned a few different skills in alternative cooking. One of them would be our measuring skills. So for example, we learned what measuring cups are meant for what ingredients. So wet ingredients and dry ingredients have different measuring cups. We learned how to read recipes, so we understand what we're doing, and we're doing things that need to be done first, such as preheating the oven or whatever. We've learned food safety skills such as washing your hands and keeping your food clean, how to use different utensils such as knife skills and whatnot, and how to properly wash the dishes. And we learned math skills by doubling recipes or reducing them. So if a ingredient called for a half a cup and you're doubling it, it would be a 1 cup. We learned communication and leadership skills by working together in the kitchen. It's the last class of the day, so we really have to rush and just make sure we're working together effectively and just being leaders. We've made a few different things. As you can see, we explored apple nutrition and its benefits. Some of the things we made were apple chili, applesauce, and apple pickles. We also learned about protein, how it helps build the muscle and gives us energy. We made different protein-based recipes such as turkey burgers, beef burgers, and chili. We made pumpkin chili, turkey chili, and fresh garden chili. All right, we talked about different substitutes for our recipes, such as the different fats we can use, or instead of eggs, we used applesauce, tofu, or a mixture of water, baking powder, and oil. And for our fat substitutes, we use yogurt, applesauce, and margarine. The reason you might want to use different or alternative ingredients is because somebody might have an allergy to the ingredient. You might not have the ingredient in your house, and it can be healthier.
If you're here today in the meeting, we're going to make this for you, but we didn't. We hope in the future we did. Goodbye.
So we would like to cook that for you the next time that you have an in-person meeting. We'd like to give you all of those treats for your meeting.
So I just want you to know that Melinda did this, switched it over last minute today. The kids had planned on coming and they were going to serve you the food. And Melinda wanted to do the vibe tea because it's very costly, and she is teaching kids a more nutritious and a more cost-effective recipe that they can do at home. And so I thought that was great. Her classes are very, very popular. Our kids can sew like you can't believe. They can sew way better than I can sew. And they do quilting, sewing, and they do great things. I mean, I think school is tough for everybody this year, and Melinda is just great for staff morale. She had the idea of having her kids do the lunch for staff once a week, and she did the Richford report last year. She thought of the Richford report. So I don't know if any of you have seen that on Facebook, but that was Melinda's brainchild, and so she does great things for our school.
Melinda, thank you so much for presenting this to the board. I wish that we had been in person to be able to enjoy those amazing looking snacks. And I just have to tell you, my favorite Richford report last year was the raining one. Like I had to rewatch that. And yes, that was very funny.
Hurricane Irene, right?
Yes.
Yes, Hurricane Irene. Yeah.
Yes.
And we're slowly getting that started again this year. It's just taking a little bit of time. We've had one episode, but there's more to come.
Great. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. And I wish we would have been there to have some treats too.
Well, thank you for your time.
Thanks,
you.
Melinda.
Okay, that's it, Beth. Okay, on to Morgan.
Thanks for having me. It's a great lead in. Good. Since Melinda was talking about math and life skills, that's what we do when it comes to budgets as well. I am going to try to share my screen and keep the audio going. I'd sent out your monthly financial report by email earlier today, and I don't remember if we've done a detailed walkthrough in that new format yet or not.
I don't believe so.
I don't think so either, but I could be wrong.
Well, I will do that now, and I can speed this up or slow it down as you guys want. Just let me know. Once I can pull it up. So this follows roughly the same format that the ones out of your old system followed last year. As you go through it, it'll be broken down first by fund, and generally for your districts, I will just be giving you your general fund accounts. First section under that is revenue, and then expenses, and going through the columns that you have. This first column here is your adopted budget. This is what you took to voters last March. Your current budget would include any changes that we make throughout the year. If we're cutting expenses because we're anticipating that we'll have fewer tuition students, for example, or you've got a grant that's going to take on some expenses that normally would have been in your general fund, or the principals have just decided that they need to reallocate where they're spending some of the money in their building level budgets. Year-to-date actual is what we have spent through the end of the month that I'm showing you. Encumbrance and receivables is what the system knows it's going to spend between now and the end of the year. So that's primarily salaries for your salaried employees, where we know what their payroll is going to look like until June 30th. And then the variance is the difference between the year-to-date and the encumbrance compared to your current budget. So generally, as you go through this, positive numbers are good. It means you haven't spent everything and don't plan to. Negative numbers are bad. It means that you've overspent what we've planned to budget. As we go through the expense section, you will see it broken out by school. The 2 Enosburg schools come first, then you'll have the 2 Richford schools, followed by your district-wide expenses, and then finally Cold Hollow. Within each school, there are a bunch of functional categories, and these are similar to the ones that we had last year. So I won't go through them in detail now, but I'm happy to answer any questions. When we get down to the district level, you'll have some of your board expenses in here, some of your assessments, and then transportation costs. And those are the costs that generally we've pulled out of the building level sections. And then finally, we've got Cold Hollow, and then it will total it at the end. And so I'm giving this to you now. We do not have the tuition bills going out yet to your sending schools, and that's really the first time that we look to your budget to make a course correction. I've already looked in, and as is normal for you, at least for the last few years, we flip 20% of our staff each year, and generally we're hiring cheaper than the folks who have left us the year before. So there are no real storm clouds on the horizon in terms of your salaries and benefits, and that's probably 80 to 90% of what we would call your discretionary budget. So hopefully that doesn't look too different from how it looked last year. I'm happy to take any questions on that now. And again, next month, we should have at least an idea of how much tuition student revenue we expect to bring in. And so at that point, I'll be talking to you about whether I'm suggesting their principals spend less money on their discretionary lines, or whether we start looking at whether there are any capital improvement projects that we should try to get done this year. Any questions from anyone on that?
I have a question on Richford Elementary Special Ed. What's with the difference on that one?
It is likely based on the use of existing paraeducators. So when we have a paraeducator, for most of them, part of their salary, it goes to general ed and will be under that direct instruction line. And then part of their salary will go to special ed and be in that second line, that 1201 line. We just had our first time study period, which is a period where everyone in special ed spends a week documenting their time. And then based on that, we'll change the proportion of where they're being charged. So it may be that we haven't caught all the changes that we should have from last year. It may be that folks who have been hired to replace other paraeducators, we knew we're going to be 100% special ed, and so put them there. And so part of the work that we do in central office, once we get that first time study, is we'll go in and we'll adjust where each of those employees are charging their time. And if it's a big enough difference, what I might do is I might bring some of the budget amount down from direct instruction and put it into special ed, or vice versa in other schools, to make sure that that's kind of tracking more accurately where the paraeducators are spending their time.
Gotcha, that makes sense. And I assume that's the same for the Enosburg Elementary, that same line.
It's for all 4 of your 2 elementary schools and your 2 high schools. All your schools that have paraeducators.
Oh, it's the same. Okay, thank you. Yeah, gotcha.
It's the same issue. It may move in different directions depending on the school.
Gotcha.
Morgan, can I just jump in and ask a question? Would this also be take into account the paraeducators that we have from Enosburg that are working with our students in the combined Enosburg Richford program?
Right. So that's a good point. There, as you know, Michelle Taberge set up a program that's housed in Richford Elementary that serves a certain profile of student who's on an IEP, and Kelly can certainly talk more intelligently about what that looks like. But as part of that, a handful of students are coming from Enosburg Elementary and going to Richford Elementary. Two of them had one-on-one paraeducators who were budgeted in Enosburg Elementary, but they're now being expensed out of Richford Elementary. So that's another category where we're going to do a capture once this time study is done. And unlike the first example I mentioned, that will actually move some money from one building to another if we need to.
Right, that makes sense too.
So are there any other questions on that? Okay, I will need two motions from you tonight. The VISBIT annual meeting is going to be held on November 5th. It has been moved from Fairleigh to online. At that meeting, there are two VISBIT board seats that get elected. And for those of you who are new, VISBIT is the School Board Insurance Trust, which we're a member of, and that's how we get our liability insurance and building insurance and auto insurance for all of the districts. Those two board seats are uncontested, so I don't anticipate it's going to be an interesting meeting. But we will need you either as a board to appoint someone as your representative to appear at that meeting and cast your vote for you, or you can vote to allow the board of directors of VISBIT to cast your vote for you. I don't have a preference either way. Lynn, I don't know if you got confirmation that Mary Niles is going to attend that or not.
Yes, I was just going to add that you also could have a third option of giving Mary Niles your proxy. She has the proxies for the NMV district and is planning to attend that conference and that annual meeting. Was there anyone from this board who was wanting to attend? It's the equivalent of the fall conference for the Superintendent's Association and the School Boards Association.
I won't be.
Okay. So if there's no one, you could give the proxies to the organization or to Mary.
I'm okay with giving them to Mary.
I'll move to give them to Mary.
So the motion that we need for the books, and Jane, I'll email this to you after the meeting as well, is a motion to appoint Mary Niles as authorized representative to appear and vote on behalf of the board at any and all meetings of the members of the Vermont School Boards Insurance Trust or any adjournment thereof.
Yes, that. I move to appoint Mary Niles to act as representative for the board in the dealings with VISBIT.
Okay, motion made by Polly, by roll. Sarah?
Aye.
Rick?
Aye.
Mort?
Aye.
Don't see Amy anymore. Ollie?
Aye.
And I am an aye. So motion carries.
The second item that I need an action on is a similar motion for the VHI annual meeting, and that's the Vermont Education Health Insurance, Vermont Education Health Initiative, which is the organization that I think all schools in the state get their health insurance through. It's also going to be held virtually. It will be an even less exciting meeting because the board of that is now defined by statute, so they don't have board elections.
And will Mary be attending that as well?
She will.
I'll make a motion to appoint Mary to how it reads that Morgan wrote. Is it a motion to appoint as its true and lawful attorney, that paragraph?
Motion to appoint Mary Niles as authorized representative to appear and vote on behalf of the board at any and all meetings of the members of the Vermont Education Health Initiative or any adjournment thereof.
Okay. So I made a motion. Any discussion? By roll, Polly,
Aye.
Sarah,
Aye.
Rick,
Aye.
Mort,
Aye.
Amy,
Aye.
and I'm an aye. Motion carries.
Thank you. The last item I have is informational, and that I don't need a motion, I just need a direction from the board. You are in the middle of a 3-year contract for snow plowing for your Enosburg buildings. You hired the town of Richford to plow the 2 Richford buildings last year on a 1-year contract. The town is willing to roll that over for another year on the same terms. And you can either give me direction to roll that contract over for another year, or you can put it out to bid.
I think we should roll it over.
Agree.
Same.
Anybody else have any input?
Sounds good to me.
Same.
Okay, then that is all I have for you, unless you have any other questions.
None for me. Thank you, Morgan. Next up is Lynn.
Okay. So in my board report, I have several personnel updates around hiring, and I looked through and there's nothing on there that actually requires board action. Those are all support staff positions. Do you want me to go through individually, or are you able to see all of the hiring? Okay. So in terms of resignations, all our support staff, with the exception of the Richford Technology Coordinator. So I would ask the board to make a motion to accept Erica McGraw's resignation.
I'll make the motion.
Motion made by Rick to accept resignation of Eric McGraw. Polly,
Aye.
Sarah,
Aye.
Mort,
Aye.
Amy,
Aye.
Rick,
Aye.
and I am an aye.
I will go through the open positions because, maybe someone out there is watching our meeting and they have an interest in something here. So we still are finding ourselves pretty short staffed, especially around support staff and around substitute teachers. Specifically in the following buildings, we have openings at Enosburg Elementary. They're still looking for a bus monitor and a paraeducator. Enosburg High School, a paraeducator, a behavior technician, a long-term science substitute teacher, an athletic trainer. At Richford Elementary School, a paraeducator, skilled behavior technician, a certified tutor, a long-term elementary substitute, and an evening custodian. At Richford Junior Senior High School, they are looking for a technology coordinator, a long-term middle school English substitute. So those are the positions that we're looking to fill. So I would encourage anyone with interest to apply. I have one item under personnel that I will require executive session for. So I'm wondering if you want to wait until the end of the meeting to take that up, Kevin. And then we can let
Yeah, I
others
think it
know.
probably makes sense.
Okay. Same for student. I also have an executive session under student.
Yeah,
Same
we
thing.
can do that then too.
Okay. So my superintendent update is not long. This month I have a little more under COVID than I do under the superintendent piece. But I've already tipped this just in the personnel report, is that we're really experiencing the negative effects of the labor shortage right now. We're struggling to get any applicants for many of our positions. And when we do have applicants, they're not typically many applicants for our positions. So we are finding that there are some roles we have not been able to fill, and we're struggling to do the best we can with that labor shortage. I think one thing that I hear from most of the principals about on a pretty regular basis is the substitute teacher piece. I think that's making it incredibly hard for administrators to cover, because they're, we do have staff members who are having to miss school because they're a family member, their child, someone is having to quarantine, or they're symptomatic and having to quarantine. So I think that there's a need for substitute teachers, and what I'm hearing from the field is that they're using anyone and everyone to cover when people are out, and just not really feeling like they have an adequate amount of coverage from substitute teachers to fill those positions. So I think that if I had to guess, I would think that most administrators on this call would identify that as one of the most urgent places that we have a need for human resources right now. I want to just take a minute to do a little staff appreciation, because I think right now what we're getting from the world and what we're experiencing from the world is there's a whole lot of negativity that's coming from all angles. And I think that it is a really challenging time. I think that we had hope that this was going to be a very different year when we were in the summer months, and as we were planning forward for how we were going to roll this year out. And I think that people were kind of cautiously optimistic. I think that the reality of the Delta variant and what has happened as a result of the number of cases and the expectations and responding to COVID has created a situation that is tremendously stressful for our school staff members. And they're holding on a lot of the weight on themselves, and that's from teachers, staff, administrators. I couldn't ask for a more dedicated group of employees. They're really going above and beyond to support our students, and there is definitely fatigue in the field. I'm glad we were able to have a long weekend. I'm hoping that will be helpful, or that was helpful for people to have that long weekend. I think that one of the things that I would encourage people, if you have the opportunity, to thank someone today or tomorrow or the next day, and just acknowledge and recognize that this is a really hard time, and take a moment to celebrate some of the good things. I know that would be really welcome. And I also just want to acknowledge that October is National Principal Month, and I just really want to express my deep gratitude for this team of really dedicated administrators that are working through some really challenging times in these schools, and they're still keeping the good of students at the heart and the crux of everything that they're trying to navigate. So I appreciate all of them very much. I also want to, I'm just going to talk a little bit about COVID related updates. First is masking. So I think that, as many of you know, when we started the year, there were expectations, recommendations around masking and connections to when you hit a certain percentage of students, eligible students at certain within each school, that the masking requirement would fall away. I think that no one really expected the level of virus that we were going to see this year, and that masking recommendation has been moved now twice. So we're in a place now where that timeline has been extended through early November. So I just wanted to keep the board abreast of where we're at with that. One of the things that we were asked to do at the start of the year was to gather attestation forms from families to identify which of our students was vaccinated and also gather evidence of that vaccination. Our nurses have access to the vaccination registry because of the other mandatory vaccines that we have for public schools. So they can see COVID vaccinations, but they were never able to use that data. So they were not going in to gather that. They have found a way to make that allowable so our nurses can see firsthand whether or not a child is vaccinated, which is really helpful when they're trying to do contact tracing and identify which students need to quarantine and which don't. And it really is saving a step for families. So they're not having to, when they get that call that their child is a close contact, they're not having to come in and bring the attestation form and send a copy of the vaccination record. The nurses can go in and do that, which is incredibly helpful. They have been working really hard, and they have not, this was just released recently that they have access to the registry and they're actually able to go in to determine those things. So we have not done work to determine where we are with the rates yet. One thing that I will say, and I'm not sure if this is evident to others, but it's clear that we have had people who oppose the masking mandate pretty much across the state of Vermont and the country. We've also had people who have refused to do the attestation form since the start of the year because they did not want to provide information, because they did not want to reach 80% through attestation, because they didn't want the masks to come away. So those are people who have been less visible, but have been communicating with our nurses and school staff that they looked at the attestation form a little differently than how some people did. So just something for you to file away and understand. So the nurses, I'm going to go out of order a little bit here. The nurses and the administrators, I want to say the administrators on this call, have also been working really hard with contact tracing. So we have, we're in a situation now where throughout the entirety of the 2021 school year, we had 99 total cases, both at school and not at school while infectious. And today is October 12th, and we have now had, as of half an hour before this meeting, 60 total cases since the start of the school year. So it's a significantly different year. We have had 39 of those cases were at school while infectious. 5 of our cases were in vaccinated individuals. 49 of our cases were in unvaccinated individuals. And when I take a look at that, the total number of 60, I'm missing data for 3 of them because they've literally just come in today. So I can only report out on 57 in terms of positive cases involving unvaccinated vaccine eligible individuals. So we've had, of the cases we've had, 21 were with people who could have been vaccinated but were not vaccinated. So each of those cases generates a tremendous amount of work in terms of determining who is a close contact, who's vaccinated, who needs to quarantine, who doesn't need to quarantine, and then communicating about that. So as you can imagine, the nurses and administrators are doing some evening work, some weekend work, some holiday work. They've been really burning the candle at both ends, I would say. And that leads me to the next piece, which is around testing. So recently the agency released information about new testing programs that are available within schools. We had committed to participating in the surveillance testing. And I will be honest, we struggled a little to get that up and rolling. One, because we had had so many cases that there was a lot of training and a lot of setup, quite a bit more than last year. It was a whole different format, a whole different vendor. So we found it to be a little more complicated. We finally got it set up, and we got a person connected, one of our nurses who was taking the lead and was moving forward with the surveillance. And then there was information released where the priorities are not necessarily around surveillance as much as some of these new testing programs. So what we have learned is that the state is rolling out, and you've probably heard this through the press conferences, a program called Test to Stay. So that would fundamentally change what we do once someone has been identified as a close contact. So what it's proposing is that we rely on a mixture of PCR tests and of the antigen tests. So for the Test to Stay protocol, we would identify who the close contacts are. And if they were not symptomatic, they could come in at a designated time. We could give them a rapid antigen test. It takes about 15 to 20 minutes to read the rapid antigen test. If they were negative, they could come to school. They would not have to be quarantining that day. They would have to do that rapid antigen test for 7 days in a row. And then they would be out of that identification as someone who needed to be doing that testing. So there's some logistics to figure out with that. I think that the thought was, we could redeploy support staff from the agency's perspective to be able to navigate that. So at the beginning of my report, I talked to you about the current state of where we are with support staff and the number of positions that we have available to us, or that we have open right now. And so there's some complexity with the logistics of figuring out how to navigate this that we're trying to work through. One of the pieces we've asked the state to attend to is when they're communicating about these things, helping the public to understand that it's not a switch that you just turn on. There's a lot of logistics that has to go on behind the scenes for a system to be ready to be able to navigate and do those testing protocols. The next type of testing is response testing. So these are tests that would be available in the school. These would be the PCR, the typical nasal swab like we've all gotten used to. These PCR tests could be used when people are symptomatic. Of course, all of these protocols would require parent permission. These are not things that we're going to be doing without parent permission. So there would be some sign up to be able to do these with parents. And then there is, they are also piloting the take-home PCR test. So there are some logistics that are involved with that. So I think that although I wasn't able to watch the press conference today, I believe they had intended to communicate about the complex logistical issues with rolling out all of these programs, because the staffing that we have available to us is fixed. The human resource is fixed. And right now our nurses are spending an exorbitant amount of time contact tracing. So to roll out the new testing protocols, we're going to have to navigate kind of a what gives situation. So if we're going to spend more time on one, what are some things we're going to take away so that we can make space to be able to do that, unless we can find additional human resources. So those are pieces that we're trying to navigate and work through, is, some of the strategic decision making and logistical considerations. Ultimately, the goal of all of the testing programs is to increase the number of students who are able to be at school and staff on a regular basis. So that's what we all want. That we just have to be patient, work together, and figure out how we can get there. So I just need to hold on one.
I would like to take this time to thank all our principals.
I agree. Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, guys.
Yes, thank you.
Sorry about that. The last piece under the COVID related topics is just the working collaboratively with the nurses. And I know that they're working with the Vermont State School Nurses Association to work collaboratively with their colleagues around the state to just figure out how does this all work together? How can we navigate, because we can't increase testing and keep contact tracing at the same level. So there's some work to do to figure out that interplay. And I know that they're working hard to try to figure that out. The other piece that we're likely to see soon is the emergency use authorization for children 5 to 11 years old for Pfizer. So what is likely to happen once that occurs is that schools are going to be asked to host clinics like we did last spring. So parents would, either schedule, or sometimes they're pop-up, but most of the time they're scheduled clinics. Parents would bring students to be able to any of the clinics that are set up. It wouldn't have to be in their individual school. So we're expecting that that's going to be another piece of the lift that's going to be asked of our school staff. So I've been hearing some misconceptions within the community, and I want to just take an opportunity to clear up a couple of those. And one is around vaccination. So children will not get vaccinated without their parents. I want to be really clear. Like a clinic at a school, the last clinic we had was at Richford High School. It happened 3 Sundays over the course of around 6 weeks. And kids don't show up on their own and get vaccinated. Parents come in and sign their children up. It requires parental permission. So just want to be really crystal clear about that. There are no vaccinations that'll be happening to kids, even during the school day. If we did get asked to utilize a space during a school day, it would likely be a space that had a totally separate entrance, like a gymnasium or something that we could shut off to the rest of the school community. But most of the time they've asked to use spaces when children are not present. So there's that piece. And the other piece is around testing, so that the testing, there are permissions that will go out to families to participate in any of these new programs. We're just not there yet, but that's part of the work that we have coming ahead of us. Does anybody have any questions about that before I move on to the last couple of pieces?
Yeah, I got a couple. So I've been thinking a little bit about resources. Would it make sense to stop contact tracing in grades 7 through 12, where students already have the opportunity to get vaccinated? So vaccinated individuals already are not close contacts. And if, everybody has a choice to be vaccinated or not at those grade levels. And so would it make sense to stop contact tracing at those grade levels?
I think that that's something that down the road, Rick, it's possible you might see a state level recommendation around that when a community hits a certain vaccination rate. I think that given that there are breakthrough cases too that are happening, I think that I would want us to really be looking at vaccination rates, because the other piece to remember is that our employees are in those classrooms with those students. And if we're not doing any contact tracing, there are additional risks for the students and for our educators as well.
But also, they also have the ability to get vaccinated. So they also would not be a close contact, correct? If they were exposed. So again, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me to be at this point contact tracing in those grade levels.
I hear you. And like I said, I think that there's going to be some state level guidance around how to handle contact tracing at the upper grades for now. But I would be really reluctant to do that without some state level guidance, because I really think there's going to be a strong connection to vaccination rate. I think that one of the pieces around contact tracing in general is logistically, one of the things that I have heard the Secretary of Education say is we have to think about where we're deploying our resources. So if schools are doing more of the testing, I think one of his wonders is Does that free up some of the VDH staff to be doing more of the contact tracing? It hasn't been our experience so far. We love our VDH partners. They have not been as accessible to us this year. And I'm not sure if that's because they've been redeployed in other places or if it's because of the number of positives just within the communities. But that is part of the discussion too, Rick, just about how do you, I mean, you have to contact trace to know who needs to be doing the tests to stay protocol. So you still have to do both. It's just, where do you get help? Do we get help that's going to help with some of the testing, or do we get help with some of the contact tracing, or does the guidance around contact tracing get modified? So those are some of the things that are kind of out in the ether. People are trying to work through.
And Lynn, we are still identifying vaccinated people as close contacts. We just tell them that they don't have to quarantine unless they develop symptoms, and then
Right.
or test unless they develop symptoms at this point in time. So they still are technically close contacts.
Yeah, but I mean, but there's no point, right? I mean, so if you're symptomatic, you're not supposed to be in school anyway, right? So to me, there's no reason really to contact trace in that group of individuals that I can really think of.
Except
The only thing I can think-
we have to.
The only thing I can think of is maybe if you had young children at home that can't be vaccinated, I would kind of want to know what I would be bringing home. But that's the only thing. I totally see your point. Like, you know, if you're vaccinated and you have no symptoms, then what's the point of contacting them? But that would be the only thing I would think of.
I do think this conversation, Rick, is a part of the larger conversation, and I just would not want us to move without all of the information first, because I know that some of these considerations are being made above us, and I would want us to be really strategic in.
Yeah, no, I understand. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me at this point in time to be, you know, I understand the testing. I mean, I think the testing to test to stay is, you know, particularly in the younger grades, is certainly the way to go, but until they have opportunities to get vaccinated. But I just wanted to share those thoughts. My other concern with this is nurses, did you say testing symptomatic people at school with the PCR tests? I got some logistical concerns about that.
So people become symptomatic at school and they get sent home. So the way I understand it is they would have the opportunity to do a test before they went home.
Okay, all right, perfect.
It
All right.
wouldn't be, my understanding is, and there are definitely some choices to how we roll out some of these testing protocols. I wouldn't really be interested in bringing symptomatic people from the community to school for testing, and I'm not certain that that's what they're asking, but I'm looking at response testing as within our school community. If Beth comes to school and it's 11 o'clock and she spikes a fever or something else, Emma can say, let's do PCR tests before you go home, and can test her and can be sent out and get a quicker response rather than Beth having to go home and then try to find a testing site.
Okay, and the antigen test only is being applied to students who are asymptomatic, is that correct?
That is the way I understand it, yes.
Lynn, have they shifted on the, not the one today, but the last press conference, they talked about those PCR tests being able to go home and then be mailed in. Is that still a thing?
There's a pilot that's happening. And so the at-home testing kit, from my understanding, is still on the table as something that is within, you know, kind of a menu of options that you can utilize. I would be surprised if there are school communities that are poised and ready with adequate staffing to be able to say, we're going to do all of these things. We're going to have all of these available to us. I think we're going to have to make some decisions on what makes the most sense and what can we physically do. But that is definitely one of those. I think that the shipping part of the take-home testing, I have questions about logistically. I think there's some, I have some wonders about that, because when we do the PCR testing, when we did it last year through surveillance, it required us to have a courier that day, because once the test is taken, you only have so many hours before it gets to the Broad Institute to be analyzed. And if it's over that period of time, it's a spoiled test. So just some questions logistically about how to navigate all of that. Any other questions? Okay. So I also want to just talk about, I opened the wrong thing. Give me 1 second. I want to talk a little bit about our COVID response plan, and when we wrote our COVID response plan, our pandemic response plan, we were in a very different time. We were, wrapping up a school year, and we were definitely not seeing the kind of virus that we were seeing right now, or that we are seeing right now. And again, I think that was our attempt at being cautiously optimistic about the future. And now we are in a place where we're not trying to recover from the pandemic. We're right in the middle of still responding to the pandemic. And I think that that's the piece that has been so hard, is to try to figure out how to move forward with this work while still responding to the pandemic. So we have had to slow the pace of several of the things that are outlined in our pandemic response plan. We've still been able to accomplish a lot of work had already been kind of in the queue before the start of the school year when this all happened. So we have just going to give you a brief overview of some of the things that we have been able to accomplish. So social emotional learning, I'm going to go through some things around SEL. So we were able to hire a social emotional learning coordinator. This person already worked for us as a board certified behavior analyst. So she will be transitioning, Heather Hawkins will be transitioning into this role later this month. So she'll be our new SEL coordinator. We have resources in the hands of educators along with professional development for zones of regulation around teaching emotional regulation to kids. We also have school counselors had requested some resources. Second step instructional materials are in the hands of all the K-8 school counselors, and we're hearing really good things about the type of resources that they have, that second step is. In terms of mental health supports for students, we're still moving forward, not sure timeline wise, but we're all set with moving forward with the screeners that we used last year. We've got our EduClimber data management tool that's purchased, and we're working through the professional development around that right now. And we have expanded some of our mental health offerings for students. We've been able to hire an additional school psychologist this year. It's the first time we've been fully staffed for school psychology in many years. We were able to expand the STEPS program to offer it to younger students, K-8 option. And we have been working hard to partner with other organizations. So looking at how we're hiring and how we're deploying resources within buildings, that will continue to be a priority. One of the things that we're working on, we're not quite in that place yet where I would say it is solid, but trying to find a way to help with the educational support team facilitation from the SU level. That's part of our expectation around our COVID response plan from the state level. So we've taken steps, but we're not quite as far as we had hoped. In terms of engagement, I think that we've done a fair amount of work around engagement. We now have family engagement coordinators who are employed. We have one for Richford, one for Enosburg schools, and one for Bakersfield, Berkshire, and Montgomery. And Sheldon already had a homeschool coordinator who will be working with our new hires as well. We have increased collaboration with the Franklin County School Attendant Support System or Support Network, and we're seeing more positive goals around school attendance rather than more punitive focus on truancy. So I think I'm hopeful that some good things will come out of that. Our family engagement coordinators will be working closely with that team. We also we've been working hard on our MTSS system that continues to be in place. And I know that most of the principals, if not all at this point, have tried to increase the family engagement piece, which is hard because we're also in this, trying to have some expectations around people in the building. They've been able to have some open houses. They have been able to do or schedule some student-led conferences. They're having to modify some of the plans that they've had, but we've been able to increase some interactions and opportunities for families to engage with schools this year. So that feels really good. We've been able to expand upon some of the offerings for our LEAPS after school program. In Richford, we were able to add a summer program and some transportation. And we have also been able to purchase some highly engaging materials for the summer program. In terms of student-centered learning, we continue to do the work on Portrait of a Graduate. The FNESU board will hear more about that next week. I think that I'm hopeful we'll be on pace, but it's a little slower than we had expected because we're really struggling with how do we continue to do this work without pulling people out of buildings because the buildings are so overtaxed right now. In terms of student learning structures, we were able to pull together the Virtual Learning Academy or the Flexible Pathways Academy for this year, and we now have a K-12 option there. We are taking some steps to increase that farm to school partnership in FNESU. And in terms of the educational equity, we were able to hire a director for the advancement of educational equity this year. And we're advancing some of that work around opportunities and really taking a hard look at how can we think about equity through multiple lenses so that we make sure that if our goal is centered on all students learning at high levels, what do we need to do as an organization to ensure that all students have what they need to be able to learn at those high levels and to be able to navigate the world that we're all living in as well. So we've got some professional learning that we've been participating in. The Leadership and Inclusive Education Project is something that many of the administrators on this call are participating in. So that's something we've been able to do. And I know it's been taxing on these administrators to do some of this. We have advanced the work around professional learning communities. There's coaching that's happening for our building principals monthly. And we just had, we had a professional learning day on Friday, and all staff members were able to get some professional development on PLCs. We also have been pretty focused on reading proficiency and increasing reading proficiency. So foundations kits are now in the hands, I think, of most. I think if I remember right, last week, there was at least one school that had a delay with shipping, but there's been training and the kits have been purchased for everyone. We also have some of the Fountas and Pinnell assessment systems that have been purchased and are in buildings with some training for staff members. And there are some resources around units of studies in reading for the 3rd through 5th grade. K through 2 that are in place. Sorry, I messed that one up. That's next year. We have classroom libraries that were purchased. I know that really large bookshelves arrived in some of the schools and they're trying to navigate how to put those bookshelves in place. But the good news is they will have access to high-low libraries so that really engaging texts for a variety of levels will be available to kids. And I think that those boxes with the books started arriving last week or the week before. So there's also been a lot of work done in the 3rd through 12th grade around increasing math proficiency through our partnership with All Learners Network. So that work is ongoing, and that's a multi-year plan. And there's also professional learning centered around universal design for learning, proficiency-based assessment, social emotional learning, and personalization that's happening with content teachers around the supervisory union, so middle school, high school, and unified arts teachers. So even though we've had to slow down, we've still been able to accomplish quite a few things. One of the things that I get asked about a lot is, how did you spend the money? And one of the things I don't think people understand is this isn't money that has to be spent right now immediately. This is money that we need to target to be able to respond to where our students are in this moment. And we have 3 school years to spend this money. So we're not trying to spend all the money in year 1. We're trying to really evaluate what our needs are and think forward about what makes the most sense. So not all of the money has been allocated, and not all the money has been spent. I also have gotten a lot of questions around air quality and what work have we done around air quality. And one of the things I think it's important to note is, to date, we've already spent over $300,000 in HVAC systems upgrades throughout FNESU. A lot of this work was funded through Efficiency Vermont, and we are expecting that more HVAC grants are going to be made available this year. So we're looking to see if there are additional upgrades that we can do around HVAC. So that, in a nutshell, is where we are in terms of the pandemic response plan for now. And there's more to come in the years, in the months ahead. Any questions on that? If not, I have class size reports, and I just want to own that I should have done a summary for you and I did not. So your principals did a great job of presenting their class size reports to you. Next month, I will take those and I will put them together into an ER class size summary report. So you can expect that at your November meeting. And other than my 2 executive session topics, I don't have anything else at this time.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. Principal reports. First up is Kelly. Do you have anything to add?
I do not. It's all informational.
Thank you. Beth?
No, it's all informational. I did change the setting because if you were trying to access my Google Doc with an account that wasn't FNESU, you might not have been able to access it. So I changed the setting.
Okay, thank you. Jen?
All informational.
Thank you. Rachel? You're on mute.
Also all informational, sorry.
That's all right. Thank you very much. You have a helper tonight too, I see.
Yes, she actually loved watching the board meeting. She was like, pull it. She almost got the computer in her hand. So that was a pretty exciting moment.
Joseph?
Nothing new, all informational.
Okay, thank you. And Nate?
Yeah, I've got a couple things. One, we are looking to start a new human services program. And so I need board approval to begin that approval process. It's really kind of, it's a push around Vermont, obviously the teacher shortage and shortage amongst like NCSS and DCF staff around human services is becoming a need. So same with childcare and those things. So if you guys would be allow me to pursue that program, it'd be something that we would add to Colala Career Center. I don't have all the details yet of what that looks like. There's a lot of talk around college credits and having a pipeline right into the new Vermont college system to kind of fast track some teachers and what that could look like. But it's definitely been an identified need. So I need approval for that. If you guys have any questions first, let me know.
Yeah, would you be adding staff or would you be just a shift in what they would teach?
Both. I overall, I would not have any more staff. Is that, can I answer your question that way?
No. Nice one. So
I may have a staff person getting done, but I'm not quite ready to make that public.
Okay, so the program you're adding, you're not taking away one, it's an additional program, or no?
I think that Nate has to constantly look at his enrollment numbers. And I think that Polly is right now, he's asking you for board approval to explore it. Nate, is that what you're asking?
That's different.
Begin the process for approval with the caveat that there would not be any additional staff.
Well, so then my question is, again, like, have you asked the students if there's a need? Like, do they want the program, or are you just responding to like the societal need for it?
I have not done any survey in that respect. It's more of a societal high needs, high demand job. And part of the work would be looking at surveying 9th and 10th graders, beginning the process with the AOE to see if it's going to be a viable program for sure. But that's part of the overall process to begin. I don't want to do all that without having board approval. That's the first step the AOE asked for.
So board approval that we support the forward movement of the program, but when you have more specifics, you'll come back?
Sure. Lynn, and you can talk to, I know this is kind of, Lynn's been a big advocate of pushing this, so she probably might have more details of what that looks like. But yeah, I think from what I gather, I mean, we have a meeting on the 28th, I believe, October, looking at what that human service curriculum could look like as far as like a teacher prep pipeline. So I'll have more data on that too, along with student interest survey.
I think before you get to a hiring place is maybe where Polly is going, Nate. Like there's a process for you to apply for some of the grant opportunities that would come with creating a new program. Nate's right. I have been advocating for this for a while because we have such a shortage in the human resource or human services field, including education. So what was interesting to me is I asked to speak with Nate, I think back in, I don't know if it was June, Nate, June or July, sometime around there. And he gave me this puzzled look because there was another whole thing happening at the state level through the tech directors that I had no knowledge of. And so I was asking him to explore this, and he said, they're exploring this at the state level. And this is something that's come up in a lot of places. So I think that there's some effort to try to really address the staffing shortage. And, it's the high interest. Hopefully we could capture kids' interest with, when it comes to job placements and co-op opportunities. Sometimes we're a little bit limited because where we are geographically, but when it comes to placements for kids who want to go into the human services field, we could use them in our schools in terms of placement. And they could have access to, I don't know how the permissions would work, but we certainly have mental health services in our schools, and we have other opportunities for them to explore a variety of career paths in the human services field right within our public schools.
Right. So yeah. So at this point, the motion would be to definitely just approve to pursue the program, because that's the first step. Before I can even ask the AOE to begin that, is have my boards approve the process. And then there's a whole bunch of other steps, including, as Lynn mentioned, grant opportunities to pay for any professional development or any equipment needs. In this case, there probably would not be a ton, but that's where I'm at right now. And it would ideally, if I get this and things get rolling, it would be for next year.
I support it. Yeah, I think it's great.
So I need a motion.
Yeah, that's my question. Do you need a true motion
I'll
or
move.
just support from the board?
I'll move.
Okay.
Need a true motion, yeah.
Okay, so a motion made by Polly to approve Nate to pursue the human services program. Amy?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Rick?
Aye.
Mort?
Aye.
Polly?
Aye.
And I am an aye as well. So your motion is approved, Nate.
Perfect, thanks. And then the next thing, a little tougher ask, I need some money. So phase 1 of the 3-phase building project is almost complete at the log landing with the pole barn being up there. The next step will be the Sugar House project. And then along with that is the bigger CHCC project around meeting ADA and any sort of work there. But the next phase of this is wondering if we can, Morgan, I don't know if you've looked into the ability to give a loan, but I'm hoping you can loan the forestry and natural resources program some money to begin the Sugar House project with the RFP or some sort of MOU that they would pay back a certain amount over a period of years. So that's something, Morgan, I don't know if you can speak to that as far as, is that allowed to take a loan from the capital reserve, or if it's just something where the capital reserve funds pay for that and we just contribute back to that over $20,000 over a 10-year period or something like that, wherever the case may be. But I'll see if Morgan can answer that.
Yeah, Nate and I have talked about this. I don't know yet if we're allowed to do that, but basically what Nate is trying to do is to fund the Sugar House in year one off of proceeds for the next several years from that program. And that program does generate a significant amount of money. So it is something that that probably Nate and I need to get together and do more work on before we ask you to approve something. We may also have an idea on the infrastructure bill and whether schools are going to be able to access that as well.
Right. And that's the second part. I met with John from Black River Design today. He actually came out to the school and worked with the students on some design thinking. But the next part of that conversation was around getting back to ADA compliance at school, going over the fact that the elevator and boilers are breaking down and being band-aided. So we need to revisit and of course all the costs have gone up, or you can't get materials. So even though that the legislature is talking about building projects and funds, it's just not a good time to build or fix. But I'm still kind of under a timeline of getting some things done. So I don't know if we want to get I need some direction from the board as far as how we want to pursue that.
Like, refresh my memory. Where did we end up?
We ended up that they were going to come to us with the plans, and right, we were going to relook at those, I thought.
Well, so I looked at the plans and I went over those with John today, and those figures are no longer, they're anywhere from 30 to 50% different from, or could be that significantly different than what they were just a year and a half ago. So I don't know if we want to hire John to do another round of estimating, or if we want, that's kind of the difficult part. I can come back with what the ideas are. I just don't have a price tag.
I think the scale is a little different now, right, Nate? Because I think originally when you were talking through this, the phases that you've been chipping away at, if I'm remembering right, were kind of all included in that. And you've taken a strategic approach with some of the money that you have attached through the recovery money to be able to address the log landing, moving the shelter up there, the what is that called? The lean-to.
The pole barn and the sugar house. Yeah, I've used many different pots of money. Like we're on, I think, 3 different pots of money. But
so you've navigated some of that already, and you have a plan how to do these next couple of phases. So I think, is there an ask of the board around? Well, one is not around the construction project. It's about the, can you take the money to be able to start the sugar house piece on site? Right. It sounds like Morgan's recommendation is you two do some work offline first and then come back with that, is the way I just heard that. But then I think that when Kevin and I did the pre-meeting, and Nate, when you and I spoke, it was, where does that bring us now? And I feel like we're in a place, Nate really just needs a direction. Like, is the board whether it's in this moment going to look forward and try to move forward with a construction project on a certain scale with what's remaining in that building? Or are you in a place where you want to say, just do the ADA pieces? Because what my concern is, and I think Nate's concern is that we have been given some an extension around compliance with some of the remediation measures, but I'm not sure how much longer they're going to wait for us to make some decisions around direction.
Correct.
Okay, so from my perspective, it's actually, I would really like to wait to see the infrastructure bill. I mean, it's hard for me. I'm hoping some of these costs are temporary increases, but it's hard for me to, I'd like to wait a month. I'm thinking that hopefully the infrastructure bill will come through and we'll know what's in it in a month from now. And then I can, at least in my mind, I can make a little bit of a path based on that, I think, about which way to go. I know what I'd like to do, but it's, with 50% cost increase in construction costs, if it's going to be that way forever, it's one thing. If it's a temporary blip, you'd hate to make that commitment now.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'd also like to know how much is going to be offset, by, federal funds or whatever's in the infrastructure bill, or whatever the Vermont legislature comes up with as well.
Right. I'd also hate to keep our vision small based on these current prices when I think that we know that we need to invest some bigger opportunities at Cold Hollow.
So would you want Nate to bring back the last, where the plans were the last time you talked?
I think that would be a good refresher because it has been several months. Then, I mean, we know what the numbers were then. If we're looking 30 to 50%, we can do the math ourselves and then just kind of evaluate and make a decision. And I like Rick's rationale as well. Like, let's not commit to something that could be 25% less than 30 days or 40 days.
I
Okay.
agree.
That sounds good. I can do that.
Okay, thank you, Nate. Anything else?
That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now we're on to board business. Next meeting is November 9th. Assuming it's going to be the same format next month as well. Then scholarship fund update. So Morgan, Beth, and I met with Mr. Corliss, and I don't remember exactly where we left it from there. Morgan, I think you or Beth were going to look into some fund, and I don't remember the name of the fund, to talk about possibly shifting that money to that.
The community fund.
Community fund.
And I did get the information to Morgan, but I talked to Jay Nichols because the VPA invests in that, and so does another group I belong to, but Jay wasn't sure that we were allowed to, being a school district. And so I got the information to Morgan and he was going to look into it.
Yeah, I've got that. I haven't followed up with her yet. Jay was pretty negative on the chances, I would say, that it would apply to a municipality, but we'll follow up on that. And I would say that, based out of the meeting that we had with Mr. Corliss, the big concern was around sort of where rates of return are right now in terms of what scholarship funds are able to generate when they're sitting in an account, which, as probably most of you know, is pretty close to zero for most things, unless you want to take a significantly riskier approach than we tend to with school money.
I think you muted yourself mid-sentence, Morgan.
Uh, I was just saying that I think the concern by Mr. Corliss was around rates of return, which are pretty low these days unless you're willing to be riskier than we tend to be.
Okay, so we will wait to hear back from you on that. Stormwater permit grant. That was, Polly was doing some work on that, I believe, correct?
So the last was I applied for the grant. And that was the last I heard. Have you heard anything, Morgan?
There was a follow-up email that went to me and to Jen Hubbard, but I don't believe there were any action steps in it. It was just an acknowledgement that we had applied.
Right, that's what I thought.
Okay, keep that on the radar. Next is SU Board Representative Report. And I think that's you again, Polly, isn't it?
Yeah. Rick and I, the meeting was canceled because, the meeting was adjourned before the business was conducted.
Okay. Future agenda items. Anybody have anything? And we'll skip the meeting adjournment and anything under other. Rick, you're usually good here.
I'm good for tonight, I think.
Okay, so we have executive session. So I need a motion for that for Lynn. Do you need anybody, Lynn?
I'd like to keep Joseph.
Okay.
Do you want Northwest Access to stick around and film the end of your meeting, or do you want us to send the final bits from Zoom?
I don't anticipate that there's going to be any action coming out of executive. So I think we could send it to them.
Okay, so once you go in, just give me a minute to make sure everybody is gone who needs to be.
And then Kevin, I would ask that you go in for personnel.
Okay. So I will look for a motion to enter executive session for personnel.
I'll make the motion.
Motion made by Amy.
Aye.
Polly.
Aye.
Sarah.
Aye.
Rick.
Aye.
Mort.
Aye.
The rest of the administrators, you do not have to hang out. Go enjoy the baby, Rachel.
Okay. And my internet is really chopping up right now too. There's several people home now, so.
And you are out of executive session.
I'm just realizing we've lost Kevin. So Polly, I think that goes to you.
Okay, yep. So no motions pending as per executive session. And now I need a motion to go back into executive session for a student issue.
Make that motion.
Having a motion, Amy made the motion. Rick,
Aye.
Sarah,
Aye.
Mort,
Aye.
Amy,
Aye.
and I am an aye. So we are entering executive session at 7:36.
Okay, we are out of executive session with no motions pending. No other business. So I would look for a motion to adjourn tonight.
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Rick. Holly,
Aye.
Mort,
Aye.
Sarah,
Aye.
Amy,
Aye.
Rick,
Aye.
and I am an aye. Meeting is adjourned.